Folks, buckle up, buckle up. Michelle Nicholls is an Afro-Caribbean registered social worker, psychotherapist in Toronto. She's a student of primarily Theravada Buddhism, which deeply informs her personal and professional life. With over 20 years of experience working in community, her trauma-informed approach is grounded in collaborative, mindfulness-based mental health and social justice work. She facilitates mindfulness meditation programs for community health centers and has developed mindfulness-based curriculum and has provided workshops for a number of organizations. Michelle holds level A and B certificates in applied mindfulness meditation from the University of Toronto and is a community Dharma teacher with True North Insight, where she supports the BIPOC Shanga and co-facilitates inclusive community programs with peers in Toronto. Come on, Michelle. Michelle also writes about curiosity, vulnerability, and healing practices as a way to explore life's challenges and joys. The most important role Michelle plays is being a parent, a vibrant, creative, empathetic team. She hopes that she can develop more compassion for ourselves and young people who are navigating the current global issues. Michelle's topic today, I hope I have this right, Michelle: beginner's mind for wellness, growth, and connection. Now, I'm coming off this screen because I need to make room for you. Give a warm welcome with your hearts, your clapping hands. Oh, I see the hands coming up. Yes. Oh my God, look at it. Michelle, woo! Your person. I need my belt. Okay, I'm gone.
Thank you. Wow. Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Um, so yes, Natasha's presentation was amazing. And I was taking some notes because I was thinking, oh yeah, some of the things I'm going to present to you will build on some of what Natasha spoke about. And we're going to practice today. So I hope that we have enough time to just get a flavor of mindfulness meditation for folks who are completely new to it and for folks who just want to take time to practice today. It'll be important to do so in the community. So this is the Sangha that we will work with today. So I'm going to share my screen. So my PowerPoint, you will see, is not super fancy. And there's a reason for that. It's on purpose because I really want us to engage in our mindfulness practice and to really get into our bodies. So the goal of our Sangha, and you'll hear me use this word from time to time in this presentation. Sangha is a very traditional Buddhist word for kind of a community of practitioners. So the goal, we will experience mindfulness meditation together through practice. We will learn about the historical context of mindfulness in Black and racialized communities. And I want to provide some examples of how mindfulness and mindfulness meditation, you'll hear me use those interchangeably as well, can support our wellness, growth, and connection. So the invitation right now, I actually would just love if we just took a moment to kind of just sink in and to kind of feel the words that Natasha shared with us. So she gave us a lot of really amazing nuggets to work with. And you might hear me repeat a few things today that sound familiar. You might have just heard some of it, but I think that's important for our learning and for us to connect with this idea of mindset and growth. So thinking with the felt experience, so what did you experience during Natasha's presentation and what are you experiencing during this one? But when you think about the felt sense, it is what is happening in our bodies, and sometimes our thoughts might influence that as well. But we feel things a lot, and sometimes we bypass them because we are in our minds thinking a lot. So if we can feel what's happening in our bodies, I can tell you right now that as I'm about to lead us into meditation, my heart is pounding because I am nervous and I find that to be just okay. It's just part of being someone who presents. For me personally, I get nervous, and I also use that as part of my meditation practice. Um, when the mind wanders, perhaps during this presentation, notice where it goes. So our minds are always pulling for our attention. So we may be at home, we may be busy, we may be doing multiple things, and we can't really multitask. Our brain just sort of just stops what it's doing and switches to something else. So just notice, where did the mind go? Where does it pull for your attention? And this has come up a few times already today, but can we be non-judgmental and open? So mindfulness is about really being open to the experience and being super curious. So we may come in with like a lot of preconceptions about a certain practice or about a person or about a profession. And so can we just be open with what is unfolding? And what prevents this from happening sometimes when we aren't open? So what do you notice about sort of closing down or tuning out? Um, what questions arise when you think of mindfulness meditation? For again, some people may be completely new, some people may have a practice already, but even if you have a practice already, how do you bring beginner's mind to that? And are you able to pause and check in? So Natasha talked about this as well, checking in with yourself often. As Nicole talked about the weather in in Toronto, I would say the weather, it's now like dark and rainy. We have an internal weather system as well. So checking in, what's the weather like right now internally for you? And how can this practice improve your relationship with yourself and with others? So some things to think about. So I want to start with a brief practice, and this will be about 5 minutes. So encouraging you to kind of set yourself up to be able to practice for 5 minutes. So that might be lying down if you want to lie down. It might be sitting comfortably in a chair, placing something under your feet, whatever feels most comfortable for you. And as we go through this practice, again, first checking in right now how you're feeling and noticing at the end how you're feeling. So inviting you to plant your feet on the floor if your feet are planted on the floor. If you're sitting down on a couch or you're cross-legged, just noticing the body, so connecting with the body. The eyes can be open right now, but if you want to just close your eyes just to kind of feel into the body, you can do that for a moment. And just taking a few breaths here, as Nicole said, some cleansing breaths, so a few breaths. And let these breaths kind of indicate that you're arriving and you are also kind of just tuning in and kind of preparing yourself for something new. And with your eyes open, I want to invite you to take a look at the space in front of you. So the space in front of you, maybe there's a mess, maybe there's, things to do. And I want to invite you to put aside anything you might have to do. So putting it aside in your mind, not actually like gathering them up and scooping them away. So just in the mind, putting them aside. Taking in the space in front of you with your eyes, so allowing the eyes to slowly scan, perhaps up and down slowly, letting your eyes do this work at first, noticing textures and colors, height and width of the wall or door, window. And when you're ready, slowly turning your head to your right. So ever so slowly, I know we sit in front of computers a lot, we may have stiffness. So slowly allowing the eyes to sort of guide the head to the right of you and doing the same thing, just taking in the space around you. What colors do you see? Textures, without judgment. Maybe there's something pleasant your eyes can land on for a moment. And bringing your eyes forward and doing the same thing, but to the left of you. Noticing if there's a window, something beautiful like a plant. You may notice as you turn your neck, maybe there's a bit of stiffness. That may give you some information. And turning your head back forward and taking a moment, maybe the eyes can be closed again just to check in with the body, notice what you're feeling, what you're noticing. Inviting you, encouraging you to put in the chat if there's anything that you did notice, if anything came up for you. And I want to share something I think it's really important to share about this practice because we often hear about mindfulness and we hear it removed from its traditional roots. And as Black people, as Black women, we know that cultural appropriation is real, right? So we want to acknowledge that this practice does come from somewhere. It comes from an ancient tradition. It's over 2,600 years old. It comes from Buddhism. And even though many Western teachers have been cited as bringing mindfulness to the West in the 60s and 70s, we know that it existed already as immigrants and refugees, newcomers to the US and Canada were already practicing in their lineages. So I just wanted to make sure that we make that connection and don't lose sight of the fact that this tradition comes from a deep, deep tradition. And Western psychologists, doctors, they've all researched mindfulness meditation and they kind of made it acceptable as an evidence-based practice. And mindfulness-based stress reduction, mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy are some of the common modalities we might see in modern medicine and psychology today when we think of mindfulness meditation. And teachings from Vipassana from the Theravada tradition, which is the lineage that I have been trained in, or insight meditation start with the breath and body. And evidence-based practices such as MBCT and MBSR also start with the breath and body. So we have this East meets West kind of way of seeing things. And I want to share this quote with Thich Nhat Hanh. And the quote is, "To meditate means to go home to yourself. Then you know how to take care of the things that are happening inside you, and you know how to take care of the things that happen around you." So just taking that in as well. And here we have a photograph of a mindfulness meditation retreat I was on last year. And as you see, it is quite the diverse group of people. And there's a reason why I show this picture, and it is to remind us that this practice is for us. So sometimes we think of mindfulness meditation, and sometimes you may walk by a magazine and you see a very typical image, and it might be of a white woman sitting in a lotus position meditating. But as you can see, this practice is for us as Black people, Black women, as people of color. And this particular retreat was a 9-day retreat. And I can tell you that I really went through it on this retreat. So I can say a little bit more about that later. But when I say I went through it, as you know, Natasha spoke about resilience and growth and failure and opportunity, I feel like I experienced many of those things on that 9 days and came out the other side. So a few other things to know about mindfulness meditation in Black and racialized communities. Black and Indigenous people of color mindfulness groups, or sanghas, as the traditional word is, the name for community, were formed to address the lack of diversity in mindfulness meditation spaces. One teacher in particular, her name is Gina Sharp. Her background, she's from the U.S. and she's Jamaican descent. She had shared that she was in a meditation space and she looked around. No one looked like her except for one person. And that prompted her to start a people of color retreat. So you'll hear and see shifting languages because this is, the way that language develops, but it was called the People of Color Retreat. And it started at Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts in 2003. And in 2023, they had the first BIPOC retreat for experienced meditators. So many of those people on that experience retreat had been to several retreats leading up to the 2023 retreat. True North Insight, which is where I am a part of, I'm a board member and I do some of the leading of the BIPOC retreats there. They had their first BIPOC retreat in 2019. So just to show you the length of time it has taken for some of these communities to establish and develop mindfulness spaces for people who look like us. The result in creating these spaces meant that there has been actually an increase in Black and Indigenous and people of color attending retreats of all races, all communities, and making these spaces more accessible, looking a little bit more appealing and seeming more appealing with the teachers that are also guiding and leading these retreats. Black and racialized meditation spaces often discuss and bring awareness to social justice issues. So this includes activism. One example of this recently was having a number of days where people were able to meditate together and call their local governments and such to raise awareness about particular things happening in the news today. So really carving out time to address issues that impact us. These spaces also have greater understanding for the need for rest and nervous system regulation. And again, why that's important is because sometimes we enter a space where we are the only people. We look around, we see no one like us. And what does that do to your nervous system when you enter a space and you don't see anyone who looks like you? Racialized mindfulness meditation communities deconstruct and decolonize Western white meditation teachings that keep the status quo in relation to addressing racism and trauma, or the trauma of racism, engaging in spiritual bypassing. So there was a question about PTSD after Natasha's presentation. And I'd like to add that sometimes mindfulness for some people can activate some trauma, but it's not impossible to practice mindfulness even though you experience trauma. There's many ways to engage in mindfulness, and I'll talk about that later. So these diverse meditation spaces have helped people to realize that this practice is for us once again. Many Black mindfulness meditation teachers and writers have explored suffering, joy, love, and liberation through this practice. while engaging in both traditional and secular teachings in diverse communities. And on the corner there, you see like the many books that are in my collection belonging to some wonderful meditation teachers who are Black and have been in this practice for a number of years. So I want to bring your attention to this diagram. Oh, I see that it's my cut off a little bit, but this is about why we practice, and it's from the book called Awakening Together, and it's by a teacher named Larry Yang. So as you see in this diagram, we have in our internal practice, which is our individual practice, and the external. So practicing in a group or a community. We have the unconscious to conscious, our personal intentions for practice, our individual mindfulness, and we have the collective intention, so the community mindfulness and its impacts. In our personal actions, in our personal lives, and in the collective world and communities of culture, we have being mindful of the internal and external, the impact on self and others, and how that increases our awareness and increases our learning. So when we talk about mindset, as Natasha spoke about mindset, we want to increase our learning and we don't want to be fixed. We want to be able to explore our capabilities through this practice and together. So this might be hard for some people, this idea of letting go. So as Black women, the idea of letting go might be hard. A lot of us work very hard. We've worked very hard to be where we're at. And letting go might sound like a very difficult thing to do, but we want to let go of this idea for results with mindfulness. We want to develop a patient attitude and we want to allow. It's not the same as resignation. We want to kind of reduce suffering, and we want to bring in this idea of equanimity. And I want us to practice for a bit, and I just want to also just check in for time, see if we have a bit of time for practice. And just taking a moment to settle in again to your seat. Thinking about how the words land for you, the words I just shared. Is there anything that is uncomfortable or any discomfort in hearing some of these words? And I want to invite you to connect with the breath and first notice the breath at the belly. Maybe that's placing a hand on the belly. And feeling the sensation of the breath at the belly. So with the inhale, know that you're breathing in. With the exhale, know that you're breathing out. The breath might be felt at the chest as well. And at the nostrils. And I want to be conscious of time. We'll explore a little bit more about mindfulness. There are some important points about mindfulness that I want to make sure we get through. And evidence-based, we know that mindfulness can be supportive for people who've experienced or experiencing anxiety and depression. And many people have gone through mindfulness programs have shown reduction in symptoms related to anxiety and depression and their reduced risk for relapsing. mental clarity. So Natasha spoke about the mental fitness part of, affirmations. And mindfulness has this ability to also bring cognitive flexibility. So we don't want to be rigid, we want to be flexible, which helps us with our skillful decision making and problem solving. It is brain fitness and mental hygiene. So we know that long term, it can have a lot of protection for the aging brain, heart health, lowering systolic and diastolic blood pressure in those who meditate, self compassion, which I say is the new self esteem in a lot of ways. A lot of us or therapists may notice that people come to us, they're lacking self compassion. So there's an ability to reparent the self through mindfulness, healing the inner child. A lot of us might have heard about inner child work, which is also an old ancient practice, and also stimulating the vagus nerve, which is part of our parasympathetic nervous system, what is also called our rest and digest system. And for those who don't know what mindfulness is, I've talked about it, and what it is paying attention in a particular way, being able to cultivate a moment to moment awareness and non judgment. We want to build on the mental training with meditation. We want to also be aware that the breath and the body and sensations can kind of cultivate this ability to become an observer to the inner workings of the mind. It is not getting rid of thoughts or emotions. Our minds cannot be blank. And it is also not for everyone. So I just want to say that too. So even though I'm talking about it, it may not actually resonate with you, and that's okay. But we all have the ability to access some form of mindfulness. So I want to skip ahead and really focus a bit on why we practice. So we have intention, attention, and attitude. And think about how this might connect with this idea of mindset and cultivating decisions, and also a deeper awareness of the self consciousness. We want to know why we're practicing. We want to have attention. So we want to sit and know that the goal is to try to concentrate, even though it may be difficult. And we want to develop or cultivate an attitude of practice. So when I come to practice, if I sit and meditate, if I come with an attitude of like, I'm not going to, I'm not going to really try to meditate, I'm just going to rest, I probably won't be cultivating the mind or the attitude of mindfulness. We want to have the fresh eyes like a child. Think of a child and how they see the world with freshness, with newness. So every time I sit to meditate, that is the goal, to come to it with a newness and a freshness, and to sometimes think like, I don't know, maybe I don't know everything. And, thinking about what mindfulness means, it loses a bit of the meaning and the translation to English, but it actually means to remember. When we think of a child and how they see the world, can we access that for ourselves and bring a freshness and newness to our daily lives? We want to step out of autopilot. That's very important for mindset, and it's very important for cultivating self-compassion, very important for just connecting with ourselves day to day. We can walk through the world in a bit like a translate state. So we actually want to be present and aware of what is happening. This helps us to connect with others and with ourselves. We want to bring up curiosity, and we want to incorporate these aspects of self compassion, imagining how we might respond to ourselves as if we were a small child, a puppy, or a baby. And this might be hard, and this is why it is a practice. It's not something that happens once, it happens over time. So when Natasha talked about the consistency, this is about consistency. It is about continuous practice. It's not about, well, today I practice, it doesn't feel good. We are actually exercising the mind, the brain, as we were to do if we were to pick up weights and work out 3 times a week. It's important. So I know that I'm short on time, so I don't know if we have time to do this particular practice, but I do want to talk a little bit about self-care and connect it with this practice. We want to use mindfulness to cultivate a kinder, gentler approach to understanding the mind as a form of self-care. The mind is the brain, and it is also this. It is also what's happening here. We want to practice mindfulness so we can calm the inner critic. If we have a strong inner critic, we know that there's a voice inside us sometimes that tells us we can't do something, we don't know enough, we're not smart enough. We want to be able to calm that with mindfulness. We want to be able to understand our triggers. And what do I now know is a question that I might bring up often in my own practice. And it's something I invite you to ask yourself if you do practice mindfulness or just throughout the day when you take a breath. What do I now know? And through the practice, we wanted to develop a spacious attitude, noticing that we are often choosing our reactions or responses, even though it may not feel like it. Things happen in a split second. When we cultivate our mindfulness, we can develop this spaciousness. Daily mindfulness can look like walking meditation. It can look like eating. So taking the time to engage in all of our senses while we're eating, mindful speech and communication. This is a way to improve our relationships. Mindful listening, which is hard. We tend to react when we're hearing something we don't like or it feels unpleasant. And mindful listening is really taking in what is happening in the body as we are hearing someone speak. And it is a practice. Um, Brief practices to anchor ourselves. Something like making your morning coffee and tea is a way to practice off the cushion mindfulness. And we don't need to be perfect. So I just want to share a few of these quotes. If you can manage 5 minutes a day, then do that. It's important to do whatever you can, no matter how little. And this is by deepen, a meditation teacher who taught many of the world's greatest. And here's a quote, and I just want you to reflect on this quote. You don't have to do anything with it, but just think about it. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Taking one moment, I have probably 30 seconds, but I want just to share a brief practice. And I see there's some questions about retreats and some questions about the slides. So yes, I can share all of this. But as we spoke about affirmations, there is a practice in mindfulness called metta or loving kindness. And it has a beautiful flow of repetitive phrases. And we want to first send them to ourselves. So before I end, I just want you to take a moment and perhaps taking a hand to the chest, maybe one to the belly, closing your eyes if that's comfortable, and sending these few phrases to yourself. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I live with ease. May I find joy. May I be free from pain. May I be free from harm. May I feel safe. May we all be free of suffering. Traditionally, it is sent first to self, a loved one, a neutral person, difficult person. If that's difficult, you bypass the difficult person, send it back to yourself, and all beings. And this is just I'll leave this up. All of the beautiful Black meditation teachers. and leaving you with these few questions. What do you now know? What do you need? And dedicating the merits of our collective practice to everyone in attendance today. May have a peaceful day. Thank you.
That, Michelle, oh my goodness. Do you hear my voice came down? I'm kind of like zen right now. That's the word, you know. And it's funny when I talked, we were before we were preparing online. I said I put on my fake fish tank, and I have that TV fish tank because I wanted to have something stimulating my colors and the movement of fish and seeing that. And then when you had us, take that moment to just look at our rooms. I looked outside because I faced the Scarborough Bluffs. So for those of you who don't know, in Toronto, I faced the bluffs. So from my co-op, I looked out and I saw the water, and I was like, you forgot to look at the water today because you were so busy getting ready.
Beautiful.
I
Yeah.
saw one person in the chat put in um before, when they looked at the space, they were judging, oh, I need to declutter. And then you said no judgment. And then
Important.
to a different space, and it was so good. I see the pause, and I think what I'm recognizing here, I know this may be a part where we don't have more questions but more like comments, is because the pause is so necessary. um you're seeing those comments, the recommendations of retreats. So if you have any retreats that you can recommend, we will
Mhm.
definitely get those and drop and send them out to you. And do you conduct retreats is a question.
Yes. So I actually do day-long retreats and I do walking groups. So I did a walking group with some peers. So this was a mixed group, wasn't for all Black women, but I would actually love to do one if everyone wants to do one. But yes, we did a mindfulness walk in Hyde Park. So that is silent walking, and then sitting to meditate together and doing some reflection.
Oh, I love that. Uh,
Hmm.
so Janelle, you got the answer to your question. Do you run meditation classes? Is the other one.
I do. So I do run meditation classes. I do lead the BIPOC Sangha, which I can leave some information about. And also we'll be doing one for the Congress. So there'll be some information shared about that. It'll be a 4 week group. Oh, here we are. So it's a 4 week group. And for folks who are beginners, this is like a perfect opportunity for you to learn just the beginner skills of mindfulness meditation over the course of 4 weeks. So that it involve experiential. So we practice together, Sangha. So we create that beautiful community, and also some home practice. So what I do share are different links, opportunities to meditate on your own, and also some homework, home practice.
That is amazing. So we're
Yeah.
gonna get some. You guys have an opportunity for so much here. This is the gift that just keeps on giving. You signed up for free. You just keep getting all these gifts from all our speakers and just being in this atmosphere. Um, and if you look out in the chat, you'll see some links there, and you have one that just went up. Don't miss our phenomenal summit offering. So what Michelle just spoke about, the link is there. And Michelle, before we go, we're going to
Yes.
take a very quick break before we get ready for Simone. Um, because I think people they really want to get into it. And I'm
I see a
seeing,
lot of questions. Yeah. Comments.
if you're on Instagram, Michelle, tell them your handle.
Yes, it's Michelle.Nicholls.counseling at Instagram.
All right. And we're going to
Yeah.
drop it in the chat for you. Are you on Facebook or any other social media platforms or LinkedIn?
Yes, I am on Facebook at Michelle Nichols Counseling.
Right. So we're going
Mhm.
to drop all these for you to chat. Michelle, before you run out of here, make sure you put all
I will.
people can find you. How are you guys feeling after taking that moment to breathe and just really center yourself and remembering that you need to take a breath? Because so many times, one of the great reminders I believe you gave us today is that pause, time for the pause and be conscious. So let's go back to our thing here: conscious mind, conscious living. Be conscious about your mind, and are you taking the moment to pause? And if you want to be consciously living a life, you need to meditate. And sometimes we have been taught the meditation word is something we run from. And it is really just taking care of yourself. So, Michelle, I totally honor you, and I
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for your love, your light, and your gift of self today.